Hey over there, Joe Lunchbox.
And Joy Nightingale.
And today we have landed right here in Cleveland, Ohio. Now we're going to go to an interesting attraction. Its name is Buckland Museum of Witchcraft. And you may be saying, witchcraft, what is that about? Stuff in Salem? No. Now you see, there was a man named Raymond Buckland who in the 60s started learning about witchcraft, aka modern witchcraft known as Wicca. He learned on the Isles of Man by a man named Gerald Gardner, the founder of modern Wicca. Now, this intrigues to me because when I was 16 years old, I started dating Joy. And back then, I was raised Roman Catholic, Joy was raised Jewish, but she says that she was into this thing called Wicca. I didn't know anything about it. So, 16-year-old Joe went out and bought this book. Now, I read about it, and at that time in life, Boy Scouts was my whole life. And I was on a Native American ceremonial team. So when I learned Wicca was more of an earth-based religion, I'm like, this is really interesting stuff. And I read this whole book, and I didn't choose to read by myself when I was young. I loved this girl when I first met her, so I read the whole book cover to cover, and it was also very interesting. So, that's what we're going to learn about. This guy, Raymond Buckland, in the 60s, he worked for British Airways. He's traveled the world collecting stuff about modern witchcraft and stuff that mirrors it. And he actually had his first museum on Long Island, not that far away from us, in Bayshore in late 60s to early 70s. It moved around. In 2015, it popped up here in Ohio, and we get to bring you with us. So I'm really excited. Hopefully you're excited. If you are, like this video, subscribe to our channel, comment down below, all that stuff, because it should be interesting. Another thing, he was a professor at Hofstra. I graduated from Hofstra. So a museum looking at modern witchcraft in an anthropological way, and that's why I document stuff with my photography. So excited, so excited. Sorry, step right up, let's go for this ride. Plus that book I was showing you, the author was a guy named Scott Cunningham. And supposedly they actually have some of the items from him in this museum too. So it's gonna be good.
Welcome to the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft and Magick, where magic comes alive on the west side of Cleveland. My name's Stephen Intermill. I'm the director of the museum. Not really here to talk about me though. We're here to talk about our founder, Ray Buckland. He was very famous for bringing a religion that many people refer to as Wicca to the U.S. He came here in the 60s. He settles in Long Island and he goes on a bit of a spiritual quest. In that spiritual quest, he discovers the work of someone named Gerald Gardner. They start a correspondence, and Gardner invites Ray to be his spokesperson for witchcraft in the U.S. Ray founds a coven with his spouse, Rosemary. And the thing is, as you find in the stories of Gerald Gardner and Ray Buckland, well, Gerald Gardner, he writes about witchcraft. Ray starts writing about witchcraft. Gardner has a witchcraft museum. Ray gets a witchcraft museum. And what we have here is the collection of artifacts that Ray collected after being so inspired by Gerald Gardner. So we have things of all sorts of magical traditions, but I guess our main focus would be what some people call Wicca. And because Ray and Gerald were both highly influential in the Wiccan movement. But like I said, we have things that pretty much explore all sorts of magical thoughts. So if you're ever in the Cleveland area, come stop for a spell.
And as soon as you enter the room, the focal point is Buckland's robe. He said he also made this himself. We actually have some of his artifacts from early days there. I love the rolls of tickets from the Witchcraft Museum in Bayshore. I've been trying to find the actual building, but they said, sadly, that the house he lived in then was torn down. Like this, the high priest ceremonial horned helmet made by Buckland, 1970s, fur, cow horn, stainless steel, mixing bowl, and thimbles. Just imagine, the thimbles are at the ends of the horns, and that was a mixing bowl. He was married to a woman named Rosemary at the time, and he was training her to be the high priestess. I didn't know enough about Gerald Gardner though, and we were learning how in 51 the laws in the UK changed, that there was no laws against being a witch anymore, and he came out, the first public person to come out and say, well, then I am a witch. I think that's cool. And he then was the first person to publish a book about witchcraft that wasn't fiction and was written by an actual practitioner. And Buckland actually learned from a woman named Monique Wilson, the high priestess Lady Olin, who's the person in the photo here next to Gerald Gardner. He was in contact with Gerald Gardner. Then he said he wanted to learn to become a priest here and open a coven in the U.S. Then that's the woman that trained him, sort of like a crash course, so they could open a coven. And the first coven opened on Long Island. We have some of the items that were like early religions when they were poly religions that inspired modern witchcraft today. And that's something I think is funny. When I was saying earlier, the book I showed you that I got, that I was wanting to date Joy, so anything that she was into, I wanted to learn everything I could learn about a guy named Scott Cunningham. I think it's funny that in Walden Books it's in the New Age section, yet it's some of the oldest, based on some of the oldest religions in the world, and I find that a little ironic. And that book that I was talking about, the author Scott Cunningham, we actually have a little horned god wall hanging that belonged to Scott Cunningham, and this jade pendant also belonged to him. I always love that term, the green man.
It's like my dad's the brilliant engineer.
We also learned Buckland was a prolific author, writing over 50 books. And one of the main books he wrote in this 5-subject notebook, Wicca, complete workbook. And it turns into this book. That's pretty cool. I love this postcard of Gardner in front of the Witch's Mill. That was the name of his museum in the Isle of Man. One of the items that Buckland got while on his trip to England, one of the trips, an antique mandrake root carved like woman holding a child. There you see the woman in the back, the child in the front. They have a drawing to show how it would look. Getting into some psychedelic of the 60s. Even though I know those aren't 60s pest dispensers, but I love them. Oh. You never go wrong with some Ben Cooper Halloween masks. Oh my god, this Halloween decoration is so amazing. It looks like vacuum sealed. The cat and the pumpkin. Not everyone knows that crystal skull vodka. You think crystal skulls, you might think of some ghosts and stuff. Well, a Ghostbuster is the owner of the company. So Dan Aykroyd is actually one of the co-owners of the Crystal Skull Vodka Company. Picture of Anton LaVey. And I love this. Devilfish, aka Jenny Hanover. Like this. Traditional sacrificial puppet doll made of wax. And then someone, looks like they didn't have wax, and at one point they used a troll doll. We have some Aleister Crowley stuff. Aleister Crowley was alive in the late 1870s, 1940s. English occultist, ceremonial magician. The fact that they have items from that, this is incredible. And one of the featured items in the museum is supposedly from the 70s in Buckland's collection. There's a demon trapped in the box. I don't know, stuff like this fascinates me. I love approaching all this stuff at an anthropological standpoint, learning all I could learn. They also have rotating exhibits. This one is an art exhibit called Magia Protector. Good saying to live by. Your fate is in your hands. Standing in the magic circle. Oh, this spot's awesome. I knew you'd love it.
This is our protection circle. It's our museum safe space, painted by an artist named Jesse Bransford, who was the chair of the NYU art department when he painted it.
Nice.
Yeah.
This place was amazing. As we're walking back to a car, leaving, you see the sun set. It was bright when we walked in. We were there for a while.
Yep.
The man Steven, who you saw in this video, took tons of time out of his day to talk to us, to share stories. That place was amazing. One, knowledge. Two, kindness of people talking to us. I loved it. What do you say, Joy?
It was amazing, just like all the different things that they had there, like high priestess, headpieces, and Hanover, and yeah.
We'll put the link to them down below so you could go online if you're going to be in this area and then schedule a tour like we did. Awesome place. I loved it. Can't recommend that place enough. I always love learning about anything I can. More knowledge, the better. Very knowledgeable people helps, makes it an amazing museum.
It does.
All right, I think we can call it though.
I think so.
Buckland's Museum of Witchcraft. Been there, done that. Remember, folks, safe travels.
Good eats.
And live life. Very cool. I think that's the thumbnail, Joy. You nailed it. Yeah.